Hello everybody, Tom Ellsworth here, and welcome to Case Studies with the BizDoc. This week, we're going to be talking about Groupon and digital coupons. You know, when you look at technology, there's been so many ways that technology has made life better for us, and it's infiltrated and changed a bunch of legacy industries, and those old paper coupons, that they're still around, but coupons is one area where you may have an app on your phone from Target, from Walmart, you get your coupons that way, but there still is places you can clip your coupons, but that used to be the only way to do it. And going back several years, remember you used to buy your Thursday paper because that was when all the grocery coupons were in there. I remember my mom did that, and people I knew did that. Heck, in college I did that. Oh, the Thursday paper's here, let's cut the coupons out, and then you go get stuff at the store, just basic stuff. Then there were also, remember entertainment books? Entertainment books were full of coupons. You'd have people from the high school, like the high school football team or the cheerleaders trying to sell you a coupon book for 15 bucks. You'd tear the pages out for restaurants or groceries, whatever it was. And finally, they gave way to digital coupons because, hey, everybody's got email and we can track and learn the kind of things you like and determine what coupon we send you and when we send it. And that was the story of Groupon, a pioneer in the digital coupon area. So the 2 points we're going to learn today is one, about business model. You got to know what you're doing because replicating a flawed business model just means if you're wrong, you'll lose money faster. And if that's investor money, that's even worse. The second point is greed can be bad, especially when it's married to hubris. Oh, hubris. Well, if any of you saw the Nokia case study, there's that word again. All right. So let's dive in and let's go to the beginning of the story of Groupon. Groupon was founded by a guy named Andrew Mason, and the company he founded turned into Groupon, but that's not what he started with. He dropped out of school because he had an interesting idea to fund a business for online collective actions and collective fundraising, and it was called The Point. And he had a friend of his who was an investor who put between $4 and $5 million into this thing called The Point, and they took a shot at it. It failed. And then he took the money that was left over and he founded Groupon. And Groupon is, as you might imagine, is a merge of the words group and coupon, or coupons for groups. And their first deal that they did, the daily deal where they would email it out to people, believe it or not, was half price offer for pizzas that were delivered from the pizza guy that operated on the first floor of their building in Chicago. Well, that led to others, and before you knew it, this thing was taking off. And in no time whatsoever, digital coupons were in everybody's email box. And it was a viral start because people would share with their friends, hey, check this out, go to Groupon and give them your email address and tell them what you like and tell them what city you're in. And all of a sudden, people started getting coupons. Well, from the start in Chicago, which is where it started, they expanded to other cities, and the traction was amazing. And they were soon touting these stats that millions and millions of consumers' emails, and that they had purchase history, and they had all this stuff on their servers. You know, that was eerily similar, you know, what we call vanity stats, bragging about statistics that may or may not mean there's a business model there. So there's an important lesson. It's like people that say, oh, I have 500,000 Twitter followers. You do? When you send out a tweet, how many people respond? And you'll find out that sometimes you may have 500,000 total Twitter followers going back since the dawn of your Twitter account, but they're not really active, they're not really paying attention. Well, it's the same case for Groupon. Groupon's only going to work if people are active and paying attention and they do something with the coupon. Because the way it worked is Groupon, you made a deal with a merchant, like a pizza place, and if you used the coupon, Groupon got a piece of the action as the person that did the email system and everything and sent you the coupon that you used to buy the pizza. And that's how they made their money. That's how they got a cut. Now, anyway, the traction was crazy. It was just off the hook. And, you know, they were just burning through money and just blowing through new city after new city and just expanding. A lot of money came into it too, which was pretty amazing. Check this out. In December of 2009, you know, after 2008, they got off that crazy start. Suddenly they raised $30 million in December of 2009. That was called Series B, which is the second letter of the alphabet. And people that are not familiar with venture capital financing, that was the second investment they got. Then in April of 2010, remember December of 2009, $30 million. April of 2010, $135 million in April. Then in December of 2010, Google says, you know what? That is a big pile of consumer information. I dig consumer information because I can do all kinds of things with it. You know, Google, they're like the big, giant information mammoth. And they knew what they were going to do. They also thought there might be some money in those coupons. And they're like, hey, we got a lot of data over here. Maybe we could put all this together. So they go to offer Groupon before their second birthday, $6 billion. They offer for Groupon before their second birthday, right? $6 billion. Let me ask you a question. If somebody offers you $6 billion for anything before your second birthday, you should say yes, right? Remember that you may have remembered there's an old classic movie, Ghostbusters, not the new one that came out, but the original Ghostbusters. There's this scene where they're up on the roof of this building and this demon from the other world asks them, are you a god? And the guy says, no. And then he blows fire on them. They're almost blown off the side of the building. They almost die. And then one guy says to his friend, the next time someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. Well, the next time Google asks you if you want $6 billion, you say yes. So Groupon's board turns down the $6 billion from Google. Turns down $6 billion. Hang on one second. When I hear someone turns down $6 billion, I need a drink. So they come back and they said, you know what we need to do? We need to go public. So they made plans to go public, and they announced that they were going to go public on the US NASDAQ stock market for a deal size of $500 million that would make the company valued about $11.2 billion. So I suppose, okay, if you thought you could go public and the company be worth $11 billion, maybe you don't sell to Google for $6 billion. But still, as they will find out, it would have been far smarter to do that. And we'll get to the reasons why. So there were all kinds of questions. I mentioned those financials. There were questions swirling around about their financials and about how they calculated these individual Groupon deals and what that meant. They also were having trouble keeping some senior executives, which is very important when you're going to go public on the stock market, because the stock market wants to see a good CEO and a bunch of stable people running the company. And if you can't hold on to your COOs, they keep leaving the company. They went through, I think, 2 COOs the year they're trying to go public. That's kind of a red flag to people saying, whoa, what's going on? This doesn't look like stability to me. But nonetheless, they went forward. Well, some keen-eyed financial people started asking questions about the documents that they had put out with regard to going public. And one of them, they actually came back and said, we made a mistake. We told you that we did 714 million in 2010 sales. We actually only did 312 million. How do you make a $400 million mistake? Well, that sort of thing can end you up in court or end you up in prison for securities fraud. But nonetheless, in response to the furor, despite all these stories, there was still a lot of people that wanted Groupon to go public, and a lot of people going to make money on that. And so they took the CEO, this young hipster kid, Andrew Mason, they cleaned him up, made him shave, and they put him in a suit and tie doing what is now a very famous video of talking about the IPO and going on the stock market for Groupon. And so for the first time in his life, he's doing like a big adult presentation. I don't know if it was the first time in his life, but everyone that saw it said, well, that's kind of weird. That didn't seem like the CEO I know. But they were trying to clean up the image, clean up the mistake about misstating the income and all that. And despite all of these negative things that were against it, on December 4th, 2011, they went public and they didn't raise the $500 million. They raised $700 million. That's how much, furor in the marketplace and the fury of the marketplace, and I don't mean anger fury, I mean it was like a storm of investors that wanted in on this deal, despite all the things they had read. So the first day they go out, they're actually worth $12.7 billion, their very first day. However, there's a problem. Once you're public on the stock market, you have to go out and make quarterly earnings report, and you're transparent. And you, by law, have to make these reports and disclose certain things. Well, when they started doing that, guess what people started finding out? They started finding out that sometimes consumers only bought 1 or 2 Groupons and then got tired of the Groupon being in their email and thought it was spam, treated it as spam, and unsubscribed. Right? Then there was retention of merchants. Some of the merchants says, hey, Groupon's really picky about the deal it'll do. It won't do a 2-for-1 free pizza. It'll only do a deal on a large free pizza. I'm kind of frustrated by this. So some of the merchants, they had trouble retaining the merchants because they said, I'm done with this. And also, you're just sending emails to a lot of customers I already know. And so I love to do nice things for my customers, but now I'm just giving everybody that walks in the door, a deal, and I want to step back from that a little bit. So the merchants had issues with it. Well, guess what? Merchants have issues, customers have issues. Groupon is in the middle, just building the market, emailing the customer to use his coupon, his Groupon, to go to the merchant. And if you got problems on both sides and you're having issues with your financials and people think that the way you're counting is a little weird, guess what happens to your stock price? In 1 year since they went public, the stock lost 85% of its value. 85% in 1 year. From November of 11 to the end of 2012, lost 85% of its value, and it was only worth a little more than $2 billion. Hear that again. At the end of 1 year on the stock market, it was worth $2 billion, right? There's a word for it, a special technical word when your stock drops 85% in 1 year from your IPO, and that word is damn! Somebody's going to get fired. Well, guess what? In March of the following year, 1 year and 4 months after they went public, the board fired Andrew Mason. The kid who had built Groupon, the kid who had been a little sketchy with his finances, the kid that couldn't hold the senior executives, the kid that had retention problems with merchants, the kid that had, in other words, there was a list of reasons. And it probably wasn't a long meeting. It was basically, Andrew, we're done here, see you later. And that was that. So after he was fired, the stock went up a little bit and they had a new management team, and Groupon is still out there right now trying to make a go of it. And actually they're doing okay and they're profitable, but it's a whole different business and it's worth barely $2 billion now. And a lot of people think back to that day when Groupon had a knock at the door and it was Google offering them $6 billion. They look back to that day and say, why didn't we take it? $6 billion when we were barely 2 years old. What were we smoking? Well, maybe that was the problem. Maybe you were smoking. Who knows? But there's something we want to talk about, and that is that the business model. See, Groupon was probably a bad example, or an example of a bad player in the digital coupon market. But the digital coupon market didn't turn out the way everybody thought it would, because people didn't really assess the business model of digital coupons. For instance, a business model is, you get my mom to use coupons over and over again, and she's a regular customer using the coupons. And there's vendors and stores and things that are regular vendors, and it creates a recurring economy. Well, a lot of this was people would try and die, or a merchant would try and die. I hope that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? Try and die, come and go. Well, now you're just constantly trying to find new customers, working yourself to the bone. And it's a very interesting thing. Back in 2010, when Groupon all the buzz was coming up, there was a little company in Seattle called Living Social. They were also doing daily deals. Well, Living Social, Amazon invested $175 million in Living Social in 2010. And then in the third quarter of 2012, when all the fun was happening with Groupon, Amazon wrote off $169 million of that investment. So big companies sometimes buy companies and write it off. I think you may have remembered in the Nokia case study I did how Microsoft wrote off billions of dollars from its purchase of Nokia. Well, here's another example, except Amazon's a little smarter. Number one, they spent less going in. And number two, when it was time to give up, they gave up. And when the king of online sales, Amazon, can't get jacked up about it and starts writing it off and backing off, maybe there's more of a problem than a company's involvement. Maybe it's just that digital couponing was never going to be the big crazy thing of the future that everybody thought. So guess what? It was the business model. And it was studying the business model and being honest about what would get merchants to stay in the game, what would get consumers to stay in the game. And the very end of the story is a shocking one. In October of 2015, Amazon exited daily deals completely and said that the Amazon local daily deal and Living Social, they were done with it. And they laid off some staff and said, hey, this is not a space that's working out and there's nothing here. Then this year, Groupon's new management bought what was left of Living Social. I never saw a price announced, maybe I missed it somewhere, but to me it was more like kind of Groupon buying a dying dog. They bought Living Social from down the street, and so now the two players in digital coupons are under one roof. Groupon is profitable, but worth maybe 1/3 of what it was when Google came to the door and maybe 1/6 of what it was when it went public. So there's something to think about in this case study, and that is business models. And you can see how a lot of companies got jacked up about digital coupons, and a lot of money was invested, and a lot of people went crazy, and then a lot of money was lost, and then there was also the CEO that had his own issues and misstating financial reports and things like that. That was a lot of things, and if you want to read all about the Groupon story, go over to Business Insider one day and pull their little ebook on Groupon, and it's free, and you can read the whole long story and all the gossip. But beyond the gossip, this is a lesson of business model, and that you should spend a lot of time on the business model and make sure that an early yes you may seem in the market, whether it's Vanity Stats or it's a real honest to good market and there's a real business model to be had. And I'll recommend a book. One of my favorite books is this one, Business Model Generation. And it was written by Alexander Osterwalder. I always look at his name because I always scared I'm going to mispronounce it. But you can find this and go give it a read because this is inexpensive insurance and it's one of the things that could help you make a great business model. It's probably good practice as an entrepreneur to read books like this and be up to speed on what great business models are all about. Because what you don't want to be is a bad business model that's nothing more than buzz on day one that turns into a train wreck later on. Because whether you're Groupon or Amazon, you could find yourself in a space that just doesn't take off. And so that's the story of Groupon. That's it for today. And of course, as we say every week, please subscribe to Valuetainment, and this is where you're going to find the best content on the internet for entrepreneurs. And until next time, I'm Tom Ellsworth, and I hope I left you better than I found you.